Now we have quite a few lampposts to restore. The first one was actually started 10-15 years ago and still isn't finished. And we've done various bits and pieces, but this was the first real complete job. The wire brush is doing a splendid job, and you can see the paint has protected the cast iron. I mean, cast iron's pretty robust anyway, but the metal was coming up as shiny, just like new. It was amazingly good underneath. Before anybody starts whinging, yes, this is probably a lead-based paint. We was doing it in a very windy patch. As you can see, most of it just drifts away, and on occasions I did have to put a face mask on because the wind had died down, or I was not able to get my back to the wind. The worst part was the base, the bit that was concreted in the ground originally. Now, as you can see, there's another lamppost there, and I've got one at the top of the drive already concreted in. That stupidly should have had the same treatment as this. But there you go, hindsight, eh? So we're just prepping this up. The next step would be to give it a coat of primer and concrete it in the ground. Don't know where this one come from, actually. I can't remember, but it's slightly different to all the others, and sadly no door. Can't ever remember seeing a door for it, but I'll cover that a little bit later in the video. But as you can see, you know, underneath the paint it was in really, really good condition. Now you can see like a tide line mark just below where I'm cleaning up now, and I don't know whether that's the height that they're meant to be concreted into the ground or what. I'm not sure. I'd imagine it was. The hole that you can see just below where I'm sanding, I'm actually sanding on the what I call the tide line. The hole just below we've actually left accessible because we needed to feed some power cables up. We put a double socket inside. Just behind where this is mounted there's a pond, and one of the power supplies we're running the pump. The other one, well, whatever, I don't know, but it's double waterproof socket. Probably didn't need to be waterproof up in there, but better safe than sorry. Interestingly, on a casting point of view, bottom right of the picture you can see a gate. There's several places on the lamppost that had them, but that was the most pronounced. Obviously they didn't need to clean that up. Finally done, ready for some paint now. It's the last little bit to finish at the top here. Now I haven't got any photographs of it, but the next job was simply priming it. The cast iron doesn't deteriorate at all, or very little, even where it was buried in the concrete, the bottom bit there. We dug a hole, concreted it in, so with the primer paint on, we didn't want it quite as low in the ground as it was originally. It's not like this is going to be alongside a road, so it does stick out of the ground a little bit more than it would do normally, I think. But this was mainly so we could get access the two lower holes which were in the bottom, so we could get some wiring up inside it. After that it was tackling the door, which we didn't have, so casting one was possible. I decided I'd just 3D print one in plastic. So that was the basic shape, and I printed out a little test sample, just like 10mm high, just to make sure it all fitted in there and was the right shape. And I made the shape basically. I just used a piece of cardboard and then make my measurements off that. So this is the basic shape of the door. Now I wanted to strengthen the back of the door up, so this was in part working towards that. And to do this I needed an offset plane, and that's why I created this rather elaborate support for that plane. So here's the lattice work that I was going to design for the strengthening of the back of it, and I'll come back to this a little bit later on, because I had to undo some of the work that I'd already done. But as I say, I'll come back to that. So I placed a half moon on each end of the door to finish the top and bottom bits off, and it was just a matter of trying to cut off the little excesses, because I had some weird angles, so it was easier to leave them in place and then just trim them off afterwards. So another offset plane. I'm going to start the writing to place on the face. A little bit of poetic license going on in there. I'm not going to say what part of that is poetic license. But this was embossed, and I've simply coloured it here just to highlight the differences. So back to strengthening the back of it, and this was maybe not necessary, but I decided I was going to do it anyway. So there was the lattice work, but you can see I had to remove a lot of the curvature out the back of it. There's the embossed strengthening at the back, and here you can see the parts on the sides which I had to remove, and I hadn't really realised that, of course, embossing will only work directly on a surface, so where you can't get to it, it doesn't emboss, and as such these areas I've highlighted were not getting embossed behind that because there was an undercut. So I'd had to cut away part of the model and then reinstate it after I'd done the strengthening and the bracing. And this is what it finally looked like at the end. So we'll move on to the lamp, and this was completely stripped, repainted and repaired as required. The wiring obviously had to be done, and although the glass, one of the glasses, there's two glasses strangely enough, one of them was cracked, but there was no point in touching it. It was a fracture that looked like it had been there a long time. So I just made sure that I had some rubber fingers underneath the copper bracing for it. So I'm putting this PIR on the bottom of the lamppost. Well, this is the lamppost top, and this isn't the most prettiest of thing, but need an all-round sensor really, and although some of it's going to be obscured by the lamppost, this was the best I could offer up. And it's going to have to go on the bottom of the lamppost like so. So the mounting of it, this is the mounting box for it, and I've already offered it up and got one hole marked ready to go, and I've got some stainless steel screws because I'm going to tap the threads in this. Reason I'm tapping it is because there's a crossbar goes through here, which is for the ladder rest you'd have had, and the bar goes out across
And of course the screws, if I put them through, will more than likely come into contact with that crossbar. So I'm drilling it and tapping it. Got a set of taps that I'd purchased for another job. Because it's cast iron, it machines really nicely, so it takes that tap lovely. Beautiful. I'm just squaring it up with a base, and it's about as best I can get. Right, okay, now, next is wiring port. Hopefully that's marked that up enough. So I'm going to put in a 3-core flex cable, and I'm using this basically because it's round, it's convenient, and I can get it threaded in and put in place before anything else, and it's still flexible enough to feed down the lamppost when this is mounted on top, which is going to be a job on its own. But it measures 7.8 in diameter, so I've got an 8mm drill. That should be nice comfortable size for it. Lovely. That's a nice tight fit through there.
So this is what it ended up looking like. Not the prettiest of things, but it does actually work really well now that it's actually up and running. So the top part, we've got a cherry picker, so we stuck it up there. And this was last year actually, and winter came. Luckily we've got a second coat of primer on it, and winter came. Strange icicle which I had to take a photograph of. Anyway, spring started to get it repainted, and it was all starting to look really really good, and it does look really good. And I'm just going to leave you with a couple of nighttime shots. They're not brilliant. I'm going to cover some other bits and pieces in the garden as well in future videos. Ta-ra, and thanks for watching. See you soon.